We are back and we are joined by friend of the show, Dave Weigel, politics writer at Semaphore, author of the Americana newsletter, joining us from sunny Arizona. Dave, how you doing 25 days out from the election?
I'm doing great. It's a dry heat, isn't that what you're supposed to say in Arizona? So I'm excited. I'm going to go out with canvassers later at the height of the sun.
Oh my
So this
goodness.
might be the last time I talk to you, but it's good to be on the show.
Yeah. Is it like I can't even process how hot it probably is. Like there was a I think like in the I know it's not Arizona, but Palm Springs Desert broke heat records for the month of October earlier this month. And is it really still that insane down there?
It's really not that bad. I am. It's just a challenge in politics. It was a challenge literally for the Harris campaign because they were people were waiting in line in Chandler, which is kind of the end of the Valley of the Sun to the south, and it was hot. And then they were inside a room, and it was very hot. And people are hardy and they get used to it, but this is an adjustment people are making. Well, now that Ohio is not a swing state and this one is,
Right.
we are all adjusting to gigantic political rallies when it's still 100 degrees out.
So I watched that rally a little bit, and it was interesting to me because I think it puts in perspective how much the national media appearances that she's done recently have been geared towards Republicans. Because the rally that she did, in terms of rhetoric, matched some of the stuff that we had been seeing in the pre-convention period when she was trying to like drum up enthusiasm from the base. At least from what I
Right.
watched, she was touting some of the policy proposals that we don't hear about anymore. And then when she goes on national television, she's like, I got a Glock, or she's going on Howard Stern. Whatever you feel about abortion, you should still support other people having the right to an abortion. Like the messaging is so clearly segmented. And I think it's I don't know what the strategy, if it's good strategy. It seems like okay strategy to me, but that's what struck me
Mhm.
seeing some of that rally last night.
Yeah, I think I like about being in the States is that you see how local media is covering something because there's a speech. Hers are about a third the length of Trump's or less. Uh, there's a normal length, they're like 25 minutes. And they do what makes it on the news, what gets emphasized. If somebody says something that's brand new, that gets emphasized. So you saw more coverage here of hair, and this is probably the best way for them to do both things at once, right? Reach out to Republicans and say something progressive about Harris putting her thumb down, imitating John McCain voting to save the Affordable Care Act.
Mm.
So that got some coverage. Hey, this is the party of the Affordable Care Act that wants to expand health care, and also, if you're Republican, they're the party that respect John McCain now, and that is really universal across Democratic candidates. I wouldn't say an old story, but really since 2017, Democrats loving John McCain in Arizona in particular, taking advantage of how the Republican Party here, the Trump era party, hates him. And Kerry Lake insulted him, has insulted his family. The McCain family's endorsed Kamala Harris. It's endorsed Ruben Gallego for Senate. Uh, like this is one of the examples. If you don't like this, you're progressive. You don't like Democrats pandering to Republicans. One part of this is they're not saying to win you over the McCain family or Liz Cheney, we're going to abandon one of our positions. They're really cheap dates. I don't say it in a pejorative way,
Yeah.
because they want Republicans to lose until some future election in 2032 when they can nominate Glenn Youngkin or something and get past Trump. They know they're renting these people, and so it actually is very effective in Arizona when they do that.
That's what I've been saying. I mean, I even the Liz Cheney stuff, which makes my stomach churn as somebody who's on the left. She's a stand-in. She's basically she's a cheap date, as you say, and she's a mascot for Republican extremism. So when she shows up next to Kamala Harris, what does that remind these independent voters of, who a majority of them believe that Trump lost the 2020 election? Oh, it reminds them of January 6th. And then in Arizona, it is a similar dynamic when you get to be like, hey, I like John McCain too. You're reminding voters, in my view, of how it's become the party of Trump and how they're a cult. And it just screams extreme to me in terms of
Mhm.
the messaging that it's conveying.
Right. That is what they say, and they don't say, and that's no. what are they running on? The argument that they've shifted far to the right from 2020, I think there's pieces of that are correct, not far to the right, but do they talk about a public option now? They don't. Do they talk about another New Deal size agenda? They don't. They are running on a let's gonna build. It's a second term campaign. It's the sort of campaign that Barack Obama was running in 2012, which is, well, we did a lot of stuff, and we're not going to have the same majority next time. But these guys are going to cut taxes for the rich. And you can argue that they're leaving some stuff on the field, but they're not doing it. There's not the, and I've poked around to see if this is happening. There's not the worry that they're going to propose something that might lose those moderate Republicans. The way that Harris talks, the positions, it's not that she's doing a lot of kind of punching left. She's doing more of a de-emphasis of some progressive ideas. The challenge, look, if they lose the election, a lot of people are going to say they left populist ideas on the floor. They didn't talk about them. They are there. You do hear some of this, but they're just not as populist even as Biden was last time. And yeah, that is much easier sell to these Republicans who just strategically say, we want, I would add to this that not only do they want Republicans to just take an L and go away, they're expecting a Republican Senate in 2025. How bad could Harris be for 4 years? That is what they want. And Harris is not running on anything that would scare them. She's not. What is she saying that she would do even if Democrats had a trifecta? Not a lot. Adding to what the Biden-Harris administration did already. On immigration, this is one thing where they have moved away from the left. But
yes,
a thing you see in Arizona, where Ruben Gallego is the Senate candidate, he's beating Carrie Lake. He's beating her in polling, but Democrats don't think it's over. They just think they have a strong advantage. He's a Latino Democrat who is leading with, I support border security. I support this bill. Donald Trump killed the border security bill that I would have supported. And he has not lost much room, I would say, not much support, I should say, on the left. And Gallego, if you don't know him, when Kristen Sinema was betraying the left a bunch of its priorities, there was a draft movement to get Gallego to run against her, and he did. So the entire party has moved, I would say, to a 2012 Obama position on immigration, not a far right Pat Buchanan position. Yeah, she's done that. That's her thing.
Okay. All right. So we're back. We were talking about the appeals to Republicans, which, as you say, it's an improvement on the Democrats conceding every issue to the Republicans in terms of bipartisanship. It's more just like, here's this mascot to represent that we're not extreme. And I think when you bring up 2012, that's what this race feels like to me. Like, people keep comparing it to 2016, I think in part because two female candidates. But this feels more like 2012 in the way that the polling is pretty strong. Can we pull up this high propensity voter? This was from Cook Report. I'm curious what your take is on this, Dave. The Cook Political Report had this analysis of the voters in the swing states. And essentially, they found that among high propensity voters, Harris is pretty consistent in the way that Biden was, +4 in that regard. But she's +13 with new registrants, which is a huge improvement over Biden. In May, Trump was up 10 with new registrants. And she's cut into his lead, Trump, with low to mid engagement voters who, like, unlike the high propensity voters where it's over 90%, high 90s say that they're going to be definitely voting, that's only 70% for these low to mid engagement voters. And that, to me, is what Trump's lead is based on. And that foundation's a little shaky if you just drive up the numbers with the metrics that they have. And they're clearly targeting these high propensity voters. And that's why this conservative, more conservative campaign is directed towards those folks.
Yeah, it is. That's a good way to put it, because these are voters who never skip elections. They vote locally. They vote in every presidential. And this was the problem Republicans ran into in 2022. It turns out that coalition is very effective in a midterm. The old Democratic coalition, which was more working class, fewer wealthy people in suburbs, was really ineffective. They didn't turn out. And the Republican theory, this is what Democrats worry about too, is that, yeah, they do. The people who are non-traditional voters do turn out if Trump's running. So what are we going to do about that? And that is their challenge. They see an electorate that if it looks like 2020, probably maybe the turnout's not as high. in each of these swing states that you've got people who voted for Trump twice who will vote for him again, and you've got Trump reaching out to non-traditional male voters who don't like politics, anti-establishment, etc. And they haven't voted before, so they're pretty confident. Yes, we've got voters who absolutely will turn out, pay attention to politics. They are trying to convince the Logan Paul fan of turning out this time when they never had before, which is exciting. We've been through this before. This was a thing Obama did in 2008. It's a thing that not many other candidates have been successful besides Obama and Trump. They get it. They're just saying, where are we most likely to gain ground? It's the people who we know voted for Nikki Haley and do not want this guy back.
Yeah. And they're also trying, they deployed Obama in Pittsburgh yesterday. What was your take on that? He's making a lot of headlines because he basically scolded black men for not supporting Kamala Harris. She's been very disciplined in that regard of not like I think I forget what interview it was a few weeks ago when she was asked about black men. She was like, I don't want to treat them as a monolith. They vote in the same I have to earn their vote, I think was her quote. And then to have Obama go out there and scold black men is an interesting tactic. I'm not sure it's ineffective, but I can't imagine that, I don't know, the campaign wasn't on board with it.
Yeah, so we're at the season of the campaign where I think this gets worse every cycle. There is an attempt, I'd say more by the right, to stoke outrage about everything Democrats do. And some of this is, I overuse this neuroscience term, the availability heuristic, but basically people tend to see something and relate it to something that's familiar to them. This happens every time somebody says a thing that sounds demeaning about voters. It's, oh, this is going to be like deplorables. And every time somebody mixes words up, oh, this is going to be like that gaffe. And so Republicans have been looking for some example of Democrats being insulting to voters. They did this actually with Ron DeSantis in the Republican primary, where he had a weird line he kept saying about Trump wants voters who are listless vessels and don't pay attention to whether he's delivering for them. And they said, that's a mean term. You're doing a deplorables. I think so there's some not good faith happening with that. However, what is Obama trying to do? Obama is still very, very popular with black voters. You'll meet the occasional influencer who says he didn't do anything for black voters, but he has a lot of credibility. No Democrat has matched his margins with black voters in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and then Milwaukee, all these places. And so that was one thing he did with this conversation with some black men. And he wasn't saying to them, you guys are sexist. It was more, you probably have some friends who have a problem voting for a woman. This is true. This is the thing you hear from Democrats who are meeting voters at the doors. They have heard that there are people who just are not comfortable with a woman president, or they don't think she's confident, or they have some issue with her, that they are normally Democratic voters. They voted for John Fetterman, Josh Shapiro last time. So he's trying to do that. Will it come off as insulting? This is the thing. Republicans have a structure here of saying that anytime you're telling voters, hey, some of you have the wrong incentives, they're all going to be terribly offended. I feel we've seen that happen a few times this cycle and it hasn't played out. So I'm not sure how that's going to go with Obama, because for a lot of black voters, it will be credible. Yes, they know somebody who has been a Democrat and they just are not convinced by her for some reason. I think it'll be more effective for her. She's going to go on Charlemagne the God next week, and Charlemagne the God is somebody with a lot of credibility with black men who has been critical of Biden and very praiseful of Harris. I think that'll be more effective than telling people you know somebody who's doing the wrong thing. The final devil's advocate thing I would say, though, is it's always a question when somebody's out of politics, do they lose their touch? Hillary Clinton lost her touch when she was Secretary of State. Maybe
Did
Obama
she have touch to begin with? Did she have touch to begin with?
Yeah, the short version of that story is that she was a much better politician, retail and with white working class voters in 2008, because she had just had to win 2 New York Senate elections. She spent a lot of time going to unglamorous places and ribbon cuttings and talking to people and doing town hall meetings. And she got much worse when she was just surrounded by bankers giving speeches all the time. And Obama has spent, at this point, 7 years as an ex-president producing Netflix movies and stuff. So has he lost his touch? I think he lost some of it, but I'm not sure if this is a great example yet.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiments on this. And, I think I headlined or talked about this a little yesterday. Gallup did an analysis of people's perceptions of Harris, and she's plus 22 on against Trump on likability. She's plus 13 on moral character, plus 8 in honesty and trustworthiness. But she's losing to him in terms of having a vision for the country's future, and minus 11 in is a strong and decisive leader. Now, Trump definitely has a vision. It's a really dark one. I do think that some of the muddled message post convention is contributing to the lack of vision that is being reflected in people's opinions of her. But she is above water in favorability right now, which Hillary was not by any stretch of the imagination in 2016. Again, this is why I feel like it's more like a 2012 race, in addition to who the campaign is targeting. Like, they're using all of Biden's models to target those voters, which is why I think, it's hard to disaggregate that. But the way that you can explain some of that discrepancy is just straight up misogyny and sexism. And I do think that people aren't factoring enough into their analysis, like that element. I saw some Alex Shepard was pointing out some piece about why is Trump doing so well with men compared to Harris? Could it be that he once tried to buy a football team and he likes sports? It's like, no, it's because he's a man and she's a woman. Like, there's a certain level of, some people are like, I like her, but I don't know if I could see her as president. And that's a real dynamic. And that's why she's like, I've got a Glock. I'm tough. I'm prosecuting criminals, etc.
Yeah, that has been effective. This is a thing. I'm not telling anyone not to believe what you believe, but a thing you do learn as a reporter traveling around the country and talking to people, you often meet a voter who just does not pay much attention to a thing that has been trending, or is not totally unaware of Harris's record or heard some rumor about her. She has been really surprisingly effective in reintroducing herself as a likable person. No one saw that coming. I think that is the one dynamic in the last month that really stymied the Trump campaign. This happened with Walz too, but the best thing Republicans could theorize about this is maybe there's response bias in polling, but that's unlikely. She was unpopular for a long time, and they do operate, Republicans, as if everything she's doing is so obviously cringy and disastrous it'll backfire. My sense is this is a little overdetermined.
Yes.
They love to talk about Trump derangement syndrome. They have a little bit of Harris derangement syndrome, where I saw this last night with Republicans reacting to. What I was thinking with Republicans reacting to the, he has a habit of just telling jokes that don't make any sense. But the Republicans reacting to her Univision town hall, she said a couple things, and she used the word "okay" twice. And then they said, that she's trying to do a Latino accent. It did not sound like that. Or they'll take a clip that's her answering question, and it's a little wordy, but it makes sense. And they'll say, this is incomprehensible word salad. I do think Republicans have gotten a bit over their skis because they don't know anyone who can stand her. And really, Democrats are better at figuring out why people might like Trump. They were not in 2016. This was a blind spot for the Hillary campaign, a fatal one, where they just could not imagine people voting for the guy for a lot of the campaign. Whereas Democrats say, no, we're very aware that there's a lot of Latino men and white guys in unions who we've bailed the pensions out for, who really like this guy, and we totally get it. We need to convince some other group of people that she's likable. There has been a push by the Trump campaign all week to just work the refs and say that Harris is falling apart. This included Elon bumping Poly Market and encouraging people to buy in, which then led to stories about, Trump's surging on Poly Market, i.e. he's winning the election. Polls have been pretty static, and that is one thing she has going for that Hillary did not, is that Democrats were always on the defensive about Hillary's unlikability. There were always voters who were on the fence for voting for her, and then if anything, they heard something negative, they jump right off. She is in a better position. It's just that Trump is in a better position too, because Trump has those 4 years as president that voters remember as, things were cheaper.
Right. And it's interesting that your assessment of the race from on the ground is very similar to mine from here. So glad to know that hopefully I'm not losing my touch. Back in the days when we would see each other at those rallies when I was on the road and things like that. But it's hard to discern. From our vantage point, there's only so much data crunching that you can do from a studio. But it seems like, yeah, as you're saying, she's basically in the aggregate 3 points ahead, and it's been that way since mid-August. And I'm not sure what's going to change in the dynamics of the race going forward. And there's a part of them that they keep saying we're underdogs. Like at the rally last night, that's what she was saying. They like that too. So they're not going to tamp down like all of this, the Trump campaign galloping around and saying that they're surging ahead. They're not going to do that because it benefits them for people to basically drive out in as many numbers as they can.
Yes, and they want the underdog impression there because you've seen in some polling that voters now, when they're asked who will win the election, they started to say, for the first time in the last month, they expect Harris to, not by a lot, by two or 3 points. And this has been wrong in the last 3 elections. So in 2020, when people asked that question, they often said Trump would win. In 2016, overwhelmingly, they say Hillary would win. And they do want to contradict the impression that she's surging so much that she's got this locked up. The campaign's also doing this by not it knows how much money it raised in the last 3 months. It knows the quarterly earnings. It has to release them by the middle of this month, the 15th. But the Trump it has not said what it raised yet. And I think Teddy Schleifer at the New York Times pointed this out. It's because they don't want people to say, "Oh, she's good. We don't need to keep giving money."
Right.
Because they want to be an underdog, and part of that too is they have on the other side Republicans, including Elon Musk, who can just give hundreds of millions of dollars to a PAC at the last minute if they need to. That's all part of the same thing. They want Democrats to remain scared and keep knocking on doors. They don't want the impression. I think it's gone away this week. They want the impression of a couple of weeks ago where that she's winning. It's still nothing is as overconfident as 2016 though. There were so many moments in 2016, and right now we were living through. And I was at the Post at the time. The Access Hollywood tape aftermath, and yes, it was happening the same time as WikiLeaks. But there were a lot of Democrats, a lot of Republicans who said, "Well, this is over, and we need to plan for the future because we know Hillary's going to win." I was talking to Republicans who were assuming Hillary was going to win, and they were talking about how they're going to block her nominees. That's not the situation now, but they want to be total panic by Democrats that they all need to turn out. If you're a Republican, don't assume she's going to win. If you're a Haley Republican, don't assume she's going to win. You still need to vote for her.
Yeah, exactly right. And what also the people do underestimate the level of arrogance that was inherent in that Clinton campaign. Sam talks about it a lot. The fact that they were using algorithms instead of being on the ground and canvassing in these swing states. Yeah. Notoriously so, which brings me to the Republican strategy, which I think is dog shit. They're apparently, because Trump is Bradley, can we pull up that ad? Because Trump is, I think, this is a whole grift, really. Like the money that he's raising, it's dubious where it's going to. Some of it's going to his legal battles and things like that. So they're outsourcing organizing to Elon Musk's super PAC, and also to Turning Points USA, who has been atrocious. And they were supposedly going to get Kari Lake elected governor, and that was an unmitigated disaster. And these are some of the groups that are organizing for Trump here. And this is what also, again, I'm not trying to get people to be overconfident, but this is also what makes me think the Trump campaign is losing steam here. You wrote this up in Semaphore. And I hear it all the time here in New York, the anti-trans ads. They are doubling down on the 2022 strategy that was, by every metric, an unmitigated disaster. They did not get the red wave that they wanted. The only reason the Democrats didn't maintain the House in part was because the Democratic Party in New York State was so incompetent, but they were really close to doing so. And in all of these swing states, this anti-trans obsession did not have success in Michigan or Ohio. Andy Beshear benefited from this in deep red Kentucky as well. Wisconsin, Ohio, all this kind of stuff. This is not effective, and it's there's evidence from 2022. But here is this ad that you're seeing all the time. You wrote about this in Semaphore in Texas. Ted Cruz's ad against Colin Allred.
I'm Ted Cruz, and I approve this message.
Boys and girls, they're different. And somehow it's become controversial to say boys and girls are different. But they are. Colin Allred supports boys playing in girls' sports. He voted against the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, and he voted to allow boys in girls' bathrooms, boys in girls' locker rooms, boys in girls' sports. That's not right. Colin Allred should know the difference between boys and girls.
Paid for by Ted Cruz. Now, in New York, if I'm watching the Mets game or the Giants game or whatever, every other ad is Kamala Harris supports transgender surgeries in prisons. Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you. This is all over the airwaves. Why are they doubling down on this? It's a $65 million ad campaign by the Republicans when in 2022, our friend of the show, Ettinger Mentum, has documented this at length in his article. It fell flat for them electorally.
Yeah, it has not worked in even deep red states. So this started. I'll set the clock back to 2019. Andy Beshear is running for governor of Kentucky, and the American Principles Project, this social conservative group, starts running ads that warn he's going to put boys and girls sports. It's a pretty significant buy. They think it tightens up the election at the very end, but Andy Beshear wins. They do it again 2023. Andy Beshear wins. Yeah, that's the story here, that when this has been done by outside groups, it has not worked effectively at all. What they say changed this cycle, they and Republicans, is that one, Donald Trump has gotten obsessed with this and talks about it a lot. And when Trump decides he's interested in something, it gets through the discourse. And two, they test ads. They were a little bit nervous about this in the past, but when they test them, they think these are breaking through, and especially these. We're talking about Texas right now. Latino voters, working class voters, they see this and they recoil from the descriptions of what Democrats are trying to do on transgender rights. They kind of hit everything. I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but in Texas, I was seeing this and another Cruz PAC ad nonstop about quote unquote boys and girls sports. Significant because Colin Allred, the Democrat there, is now responding to that part of the ad and saying, no, I don't support boys and girls sports. They're running other ads that attack Democrats over the Equality Act, which would write non-discrimination on gender identity into the law. And they're attacking Democrats for wanting to not use the defense budget to ban, for example, the flying the trans flag on bases. They think like 20 points of attack on this issue. And the other thing they think happened, I put this in the story, and I think it was the most esoteric part for people, but they really do think Elon Musk buys Twitter. Elon Musk really does not like what he calls the woke mind virus. He is on the record blaming the woke mind virus for the reason one of his kids transitioned male to female. And he's passionate about just changing that discourse so that you are not censored. I'll just put it this way, that you're not censored if you say things that would be transphobic that you might get suspended from your job from saying. On Twitter, you can say them. There are Republicans who say that opened the discourse. Once he said you're allowed to say this, and maybe you're having a meeting as a Republican strategist, say 2 years ago, and think, well, okay, the outside group is going to run this ad, but we don't want to get into that. They're very confident doing it now, and you're seeing it everywhere. I point out it's in Montana, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Mitch McConnell's Super PAC is running these ads, and they didn't used to. What they say is that, they tested them, and there's not much of a backlash. Nobody's on Twitter. Sure, people will say this is offensive, this is stupid, but they're not worried about even the social cost of looking mean or looking transphobic. Not at all. They really think that when voters hear this, it breaks through, and it is so memorable that they can win somebody over who's tuned out the rest of the campaign. Those are important. I do think the Elon factor, which sounds silly, I think it's very important, because just when you take away the social pressure to not do something that seems like it's mean or seems like it's picking on people, then you do it. That is the story of the Trump years. That Republicans did not used to talk this way about immigration. They did not used to. It's a Republican governor in Ohio who welcomed Haitian migrants to Springfield, and it's the Republican presidential campaign that says, "Well, we're going to run against that, and then we're going to be called racist for it. We don't care anymore." It's just they're operating in a discourse that had moved very far to the right since even 2022, I think. And I'm not saying that means the ads will work. I'm saying that's why they're saying
what they're
we would have
thinking
done before, but now we can do it.
But it's an echo chamber. I mean, I'm sorry. This is insanity.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's the counterpoint. Yeah.
This one thing, you know, immigration, it drums up nativism, which is the core, really, of Donald Trump's political identity in this country. And that makes sense ideologically. And also you tie it to the economy. It's a trope as old as time. But the trans stuff, there's no evidence that it works electorally. It's also, of course, hateful. But trans people are such a significant minority in this country, and I think that's what underscores it. Like, it may test well, but and you may get a split in terms of, if you frame a question in this way, should trans girls be should biological males, as they phrase it, be participating in girls' sports? Yeah, you're probably going to get a reaction from a focus group or in polling that's going to say, okay, this is a winning issue for us. But this is not a motivating issue for voters. That's the thing that I am amazed by and amused by, that they're actually going back to this well, because it's been proven that it's not motivating for people from elections like Andy Bashir and all the way down to school board races where these Moms of Liberty freaks got wiped out.
Oh, absolutely. And I talked to Moms for Liberty at their convention about this, and yeah, their message. Look, they're really relentlessly believers in this, and if they keep doing it cycle after cycle, the more people in this new social media environment who learn about these topics, I could boil it down as the more people who learn about Leah Thomas or listen to Riley Gaines. I don't want to sound like a total evangelist or a believer in this, but the theory is just the media environment has broken up, and there are people who do not watch traditional news. Maybe they'll get these ads and they're watching sports, but they're seeing more on content about gender identity and how this is a threat to Western civilization than they ever have, and Elon has been pushing it. And so they think, yes, was this an echo chamber 4 years ago? It was. Are they surprised every cycle when voters don't care as much as they do? Yes, but they think that is changing. And the evidence that they see that Democrats are worried about it is that I mentioned Colin Allred's response is that Colin Allred in Texas felt the need to say, no, I don't support this one aspect of what you're talking about. I interviewed Allred, also Ruben Gallego in Arizona, who also said he wanted the anti-trans riders out of the defense spending, and both of them stick to that position. They're not saying I'm walking back everything. They're still very pro-trans rights. They're still pro the Equality Act. But they are acting like, I should say, Allred, not Gallego, acting like, yes, you do need to finesse this because enough people are coming back from door knocking and saying they heard that people are offended by this Democratic position. And it is, there are things that don't work at all, and then they work. You could have had a conversation and you did, a lot of Republicans in 2013 about how Mitt Romney lost the election in part because he said such offensive things about immigration. He talked about self-deportation, and then Trump kept doing it, and then Trump won. And this is every victory. Everyone takes credit for every piece of a victory. The goal they have here is, well, one, winning these elections, but then also saying we won that. That means that the discourse has moved our way on trans rights, and that really is a stake that Republicans and conservative groups have right now. Is if they win these races, they will say, among the many tactics that work was, we brought this up and people said it always fails, but this time it didn't fail. It is something that finally I'll say they really do believe in. There are things that I think I talked about bad faith and cynical stuff. I think there's just every day there's 20 weird Harris trends on Twitter that nobody actually believes.
Right.
But talking to a lot of conservatives and covering they really, this fits into a large worldview that Elon Musk shares, that 10 years ago, gender identity became mainstreamed, and it is terrible. It is threatening. It is destroying Western civilization. It's just, if you really believe in something, you can write some compelling advertising copy about it, and they really do believe it. I know that not everyone talks to Republican strategists, and I am very sympathetic to this idea that you can't just cover this like a normal issue. You can't just say something that's going to affect people's health care and whether they can get their medication is a normal political issue like taxes or something. I get that. But for Republicans, they think, yes, this is a civilizational fight, and we need to win it, and we're going to win it.
I just think that Trump willed things into existence and like issues that were losing issues for Republicans based on the force of his personality and a lot of other factors that aren't at play in this election, where he has the baggage of being the former president. She's polling as the change candidate. That's the thing that also I think people need to emphasize in a year where she's basically running as, Biden 2.0 with all the metrics and the voters they're targeting and the policy proposals are very similar. So that's an advantage too. But one thing, and this will be my last question for you, Dave, and I'll let you go. What a word of caution, of course, is about Michigan and her lack of movement from Biden on the issue of Gaza. What are you hearing on the ground there? And is that a warning sign that Democrats need to heed? Because, I saw she met with Arab American leaders, but no one from Uncommitted. These were people that already endorsed her. And that seems ill-advised. What's your position on that?
Well, I haven't been to Michigan in a little while, so on the ground I haven't seen it. I did talk to people there after I wrote a story about the mayor of Hamtramck, which is a Muslim city that's surrounded by Detroit, endorsing Trump. The Trump strategy, I can talk about the Trump strategy first. The Trump strategy in Michigan with Arab voters is to say, through liaison, actually Tiffany Trump's husband does some of this, hey, this war wasn't happening when Trump was president. Trump is strong. Trump is going to figure this out. How will he figure it out? We won't tell you yet. But there wasn't a war before. There is now. Vote for him. And not to go back over the last topic, because we talked a lot, and also on social issues, who is more in line with your beliefs? Is it Trump who wants to ban gender identity thinking in the federal government, or is it Democrats? And they've made some inroads with that. With Democrats, the Harris strategy for months has been to say that they're working for a ceasefire and to have these personal meetings with Arab American leaders. The leaks that come out of the meetings are from the leaders, and it has, among Democrats, I've heard more confidence that they're not going to be getting more votes than they're getting right now in Michigan. There was polling by the Arab American Institute and James Zogby that found it's basically 50-50 with Trump and Harris. By their math, if they did what they needed to do in Michigan, the rest of the state, if you replay 2020, but the Arab American vote was only 50-50, well then, yeah, Harris could still win the state. And so I'm not saying they've given up on the issue, but they do not see this as the determinative we'll lose Michigan over this story problem that they did a few months ago. And the other tell there is Alyssa Slotkin, who's running for Senate. She's not doing that. I mean, she's trying to keep good relations with every member of the Democratic coalition, but she's also saying Iran is a gigantic threat. I wouldn't call her hawkish because she's not out there trying to start wars, but she's not been she's not backed down at all in supporting Israel. She's not been critical of Netanyahu, etc. And so I do think in the last few months, as the war ground on, and as people got more worried here, because with that Trump outreach, if you're a Democratic activist who doesn't want Trump back and thinks he's going to crack down terribly on Muslims, yeah, that's your choice. What would happen if Trump wins Michigan and part of the storyline is blame for Arab Americans and Muslims for not voting for Harris? The record of the Democratic Party is not that they say, well, we're going to listen to you now.
Oh,
it's
of course not.
Them.
Yes.
It would be, what if they turn out like, I remember this the days after 2020. There was this immediate turn on Black Lives Matter activists to fund the police slogan existing. What if it was like that? What would happen if we get out of an election where Trump has won and the Democrats blame us for not supporting it enough, and then baby Netanyahu gets what he wants? They just really feel, one, that they're in an impossible position, and there is a sense that the Harris campaign has gotten what it can from Arab American voters. The worst things possible have already happened in Gaza. I don't know. I was like laughing so I don't cry, but let's say that. But
yeah, right.
every day there is more horror coming from Gaza, and the war is not over, and Biden has been ineffective in trying to get a ceasefire. So I wouldn't say they're throwing their hands up. They're just saying, this is it. We're going to maybe lose Dearborn and Hamtramck. What else can we win? That is more how I see Democrats talking about this. I do want to get to the state to confirm that, but that's my feel over the last week.
I just wish she would do what Pelosi's already been kind of floating this. Just criticize Netanyahu. Like, I understand the dynamics of still being in the administration and all of that, but like, God, I mean, we know that she's in the ceremonial VP role. It's ridiculous to tie yourself to this president who, you know, clearly has lost control of the situation. Frankly, Biden has, and so if she could just say, like, you know, in that 60 Minutes interview, and this is really my last thing, I'll let you go, Dave. I know you have work to do, but like in that 60 Minutes interview, she refused to say if Netanyahu was an ally. She said that the Israeli people are, or whatever. I just feel like you could lean into that a little bit harder. But I also think, as is the theme of this campaign, they are worried about AIPAC dumping a bunch of money in and she's hearing from Democrats down ballot, don't rock the boat. I don't want AIPAC spending in my race, et cetera, all that kind of thing. I don't think it's a great strategy, but that's probably what the dynamic is, right?
I think that's the dynamic. And if you told a Democrat in October 2023 this war will still be going on into October 2024, they'd be pretty devastated and very worried about their ability to win American voters. It would clearly be a failure of the Biden administration. I don't want to get. You're trying to wrap up. It's not too far afield. Netanyahu's not stupid. I mean, he's aware that it's great for him if he gets exactly what he wants in Israel. If he's basically going on a business sale and expanding the war across the Middle East, and Democrats in America. What are his options? Harris wins and is pissed off at him for doing this, but he did it already. Or Trump wins and he's got a pliable ally in the White House. Yes, he's in a great position. Democrats are very aware of that too, including some of the uncommitted activists. There is no good option. They just don't see. And I would separate those uncommitted activists from Gaza protesters who just are done with the party. That's the thing. Democrats think you're done. Okay, you're out of the coalition. We're going to go for Republicans instead because there's nothing we can do to please you at this point. It's in Netanyahu's hands, and we know that he just wants Trump back, so he's not going to help us.
And yes, you're right to say that about uncommitted activists, because they are being very strategic in the sense that they haven't endorsed Harris. They're not going to unless she makes any concessions, which she's not going to. But they say you have to vote against Trump and don't vote third party. So it's an untenable position, but that's how they're balancing it too.
Yeah, that's basically it. Just it's a tough topic to talk about because it's just. The factor that needs to change is the war that baby Netanyahu is waging. There is nothing. I'm not saying there's nothing the administration can do. What could the administration say? We're doing we are stopping arms to Israel. It could, and that's where I'll be. I'm not trying to defend Democrats in their position here. Yeah, their idea is that the trade-off would be that Jewish voters who are more numerous in key states would reject that, or the Republicans they're trying to win over reject that. If they do a hard cost benefit analysis on a whiteboard, what would be worse for the party? An arms embargo or against Israel while it continues the war, or just watching themselves flail around as Netanyahu continues. They just think the second option, which is humiliating and which is leading to death every day, they think that is electorally more efficient. It feel weird. I don't like to talk like Dr. Strangelove when I'm talking about human lives, but that is how it is playing out.
It is incompatible with electoral politics to be talking about this in this manner, but it is relevant, obviously, in some really important states, and relevant to the lives of the people who are affected by this and who may be disaffected by the Democrats for a really long time. Of course, I mean, what can you say to that? Yeah. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, it's right. Thing we're talking into a camera when I say I don't know what else to say, but really, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, Dave, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. You're, one of the best reporters on the ground, actually covering things. I think, you're covering things phenomenally. People should really read everything you write at Semaphore. And congrats on all the good work you guys are doing there. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.